Alaikum. Dzień dobry. Konnichiwa. Ciao. Good morning, good morning, good morning. It's Ken at 10. How are you all today? Thanks for joining us. And if you haven't been before, where have you been? You should be here every morning at 10 o'clock because we are. And it's Ken at 10 because I'm Ken. It's 10. We're James Alexander Estate Agents. We're based in a lovely area called Norbury, which is in southwest London, southwest 16 to be precise, situated between Streatham and Croydon, offering better value than Streatham and more of a local atmosphere than Croydon. So if you're thinking of buying and you need a zone 3 area that's good value, commutable to London and no stress, then we're it. Come see us. If you're looking for a buy-to-let investment, we are fantastic for that too. Hope you're all well and surviving the pandemic. I know it's really tough out there, particularly for mums at the moment. I was just saying to a colleague, you know, we'd happily print any information for mothers if it helps their children. So if you do have young children and you're struggling to print things, let us know and we'll certainly print them for you, and you can pop along to the door, give us a buzz and we'll pass them to you. I understand a lot of it's done online as well now, so maybe not relevant for everybody, but you know, we want to be part of the local community, and you know, we like to support people wherever we can in that way. It's not all about the money. I know you'd think it is with estate agents, wouldn't you, sometimes, but it's really not, genuinely. Few bits of news for you. First of all, on tax, the campaigners are asking Rishi Sunak to extend the stamp duty holiday. Now, to give you some idea of the stats on this, there's about 650,000 properties right now that are under offer that haven't yet exchanged contracts. That's the pipeline, what we call the pipeline of sales across the UK. Of that, it is currently estimated that 320,000 will lose out roughly by not completing by the 31st of March. That's a shocking stat, isn't it? It's a huge amount of people, and they'll miss out on savings of £15,000 or more. And of course, the implications could be bigger than that. Many buyers could pull out, request reductions, cause all sorts of turmoil throughout the chain. And it's ironic when Rishi Sunak, on the other hand, we hear, is saying that he wants to see that any further lockdown measures that could impact on the housing market, construction, manufacturing, he's arguing against those measures. So if he's arguing against those measures, surely he's arguing against his own measure of enforcing the deadline. Thanks, Tarek. Thanks for your comment. Appreciate it always. And good morning to you. So yeah, he's kind of contradicting himself in a way, isn't he? Saying, you know, any measures which impact the housing market negatively, I don't want to know about. And yet he's got a measure which potentially could be very damning. Listen, Rishi, we're grateful for what you've done, but we need that extension, please. So please do. A couple of other things. I'm going to talk a little bit about property in a moment in terms of, you know, I was asked by a colleague this morning, might be helpful to everybody to understand, A, does buy-to-let still work? B, what sort of property should you be looking at buying? And C, where does it stand in terms of resale and what do you want to do? So I'm coming on to that in a moment. But yeah, the other thing I found interesting was a stat on Rightmove. I had a Rightmove meeting yesterday with my local rep, and they said that the average property in the UK is now taking 73 days to find a buyer. Wow, 73 days. That's a huge amount of time. And what it really underlines is that if you, in my view, if you have a flat right now and you're looking to sell to beat the deadline, you're going to struggle because of the leasehold inquiries specifically. Unless you've got a really mustard solicitor and a really hot buyer, that could be a struggle. If you've got a freehold property, then time is running out really rapidly. I'd say, you know, anyone now that says, I want to beat that deadline, we're saying, look, we've got to get on it right now. And when I say right now, photographer around urgently, so on and so forth, and really get behind it, set the price at what we call the sweet spot. You know, the price at which people think I must view that one, and ask for, you know, offers in the region of or offers over, so that you make sure that you maximize the number of people coming through your door. Really, really important at the moment, because there is an audience out there, but people are worried about the pandemic. Some people have decided to pause their hunt for obvious reasons. So yeah, really strange market, really busy on houses still, and people are still looking to beat that stamp duty deadline. And there is a lack of new stock coming up at the moment. So interesting paradox that. A fifth of buyers have been thwarted from moving, according to a headline today. And this really goes down to many first-time buyers as well. Buyers were thwarted because they prepared to buy a home in 2020, but put their dream on hold due to job fears, redundancy, furloughs, house sales falling through. First-time buyers are the most commonly hit, with 7 in 10 rethinking their property buying plans in 2020. By contrast, 4% of people who had no plans ended up buying. So, oh wow, got a message from Kazakhstan. Hello, Kazakhstan. So yeah, I thought that was really interesting as well. And first-time buyers being locked out of the market. We've been saying for some time, as you know, I feel like the first-time buyers champion recently. Very, very much first-time buyers are the ones that are hit. And they've been locked out of the mortgage market. And there's a new headline today saying self-employed locked out of the mortgage market. Banks, including Santander and NatWest, have tightened their lending criteria for freelancers, with Santander now requiring a 40% deposit, while NatWest is reportedly routinely declining applications for self-employed customers who have claimed money from government support schemes. It really does seem, doesn't it, that the first-time buyers are the poor relation. And we recognise that lenders are viewing the risk and they're scared about that risk. And that's understandable. But by the same token, you know, people have got to get on the ladder. And I think you have a social responsibility to help them with that. And I think the government does too. And that's why I'm looking forward to this 95% mortgage announcement that we're all hoping will be good news coming in the springtime. So Tarek, should buyers rush before the deadline, or would the cost likely be saved on price after? That's a very good question, Tarek. You always come up with good questions. Well, let me talk to you about buy-to-let first, because I promised I'd get onto this subject today of, you know, does buy-to-let still work? And the answer is yes. If you look at the yield, if you look at the numbers, I know you'll find that if you look across the UK nationally, there are lots of arrears. As many as 40% of landlords experiencing arrears. That's actually not our experience locally so far. And I think that's because we're a combination of things. Number one, we're really careful in tenant selection. Number two, in that tenant selection, we ensure that our criteria are met as minimum, and that involves credit scoring, etc. And by dealing with, you know, good people with good morals, generally speaking, you know, people hit hard times and we have to respect that and support them through the pandemic. And so, you know, that happens, but there's still a market there. And because prices are pressured downwards right now, particularly on flats and the smaller properties, it can be a really good time to get involved. You know, one of the things, Tarek, in answer to your question, one of the best times to get into property, in my experience, is when everybody else feels like they should be getting out. And I feel like on small properties at the moment, particularly, a lot of people are not keen. There's a lot of hesitancy, and that means you can get yourself a better deal. Now, that better deal materializes in a better yield, and a better yield results in more income for you as a landlord. So, on to what sort of property you should buy. This is an interesting one. My colleague asked me this question just on a personal note, really, in terms of what should you invest in? Should you invest in a one-bedroom flat, a two-bedroom flat, a small house? What would be the preference locally? So, my question back to her was, well, what are you doing it for? What do you want from this? Because, for instance, if you want maximum income, then you probably want a studio flat, where the cost of the flat versus the income would be very strong. So in other words, you get the maximum volume of income, or bang for your buck, if you will. So for instance, two studio flats locally would achieve 800 per calendar month, and they would cost roughly 200,000. So you could buy two of those for 400,000. It would bring you in 1,600 per calendar month. And you wouldn't get a house for that money in the area. And also, they'd be very, very easy to let, because small self-contained are always popular. Now, would they be as easy to resell? No, they wouldn't. They never would, of course. What's most popular for resale is what you've got to think about if you want an exit strategy and not just a straight income. And for most of us, of course, what we want is a balance. We want a good, strong yield. We also want the ability to resell or refinance when the time is right, and popularity with both tenants and buyers for when both of those things come into play. So basically, in terms of what you should buy, you should first of all think, what do I want? First of all, is it income? And if it's income, then small self-contained units will always rent very readily and give you maximum bang for your buck, and the least hassle and the least down periods in our experience. That said, the pandemic has changed things. Outside space is really, really sought after these days. People are looking now for garden space particularly. So garden flats or small houses, hugely popular on the rental market, even now in this market. So if you look at, we did the numbers earlier on, and the average garden flat, we've got a garden flat to give you a good contrast. We've got a one-bedroom flat on the market at the moment, really good buy for a first-time buyer investor, and that would get $950 per calendar month easily. And then we have a two-bedroom garden flat, and that would achieve $1,350 per calendar month to $1,400 roughly. And if you equate the two things, what you'll find is that the 2-bedroom flat in this case yields slightly better than the 1-bedroom flat. But of course, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't buy the 1-bedroom flat. It just means that if you have the budget, then the 2-bedroom represents a better balance of yield. Number one, you will get a little bit more if you've got the budget. That's a big question. And also, having a garden makes it hugely popular across the range. And it also, with a 2nd bedroom, what both tenants and buyers want quite often with a 2nd bedroom is a study. They use it as a study, but also in the back of their minds, if they are furloughed, if things get tough, they've got a 2nd bedroom. In our area, a bedroom alone would achieve roughly £500-600 per calendar month. That would contribute massively towards their rent. So it gives them a form of income protection in that way. Also, with garden flats, the pandemic and the experience we've had here, it's not going away. We may find, and hopefully there's light at the end of the tunnel now, with all the vaccinations going on, that things will get better. But in the meantime, garden flats have a whole new popularity that they've never had before. So a 2-bedroom garden flat is a fantastic buy-to-let investment for us locally. Of course, it varies from area to area and depending where you are. For instance, I have one client that buys in Mayfair. His yield is tiny compared with what we get here in southwest London, but he looks for capital growth. Hasn't worked out very well for him right now, but that's where we are. So basically, in terms of what you should buy, you need to speak to local agents, get a feel for what it's like on the ground, what people are asking for, what do tenants want, what do buyers want, what is my strategy? Maybe you want to own this property for 5 years and then you want to exit out where you've made a profit on the property. And in the meantime, you've had an investment. Most people look longer than that. And what we found, if we look back over the last 10 years, many of you will know we've been here for 30 years. So we can say, 20, I think it's 28 in total, 25 as James Alexander. But yeah, so if we look back and I look at some of those landlords, many of them originally bought with the intention of selling 10 years on. But what they actually did 10 years on was quite often refinanced, released some cash, bought another. Some of them decided that actually they'd rather pay down the mortgage and use the income. That's quite popular as well, so that they've got a supplement to their pension. And certainly what we found is that it's been inflation busting massively. In other words, rents have ran massively ahead of inflation, which means that in terms of pension protection, where their pensions have stayed still or gone backwards, their rental income has gone up and become more significant in their life, often than their actual pension itself. So they're a great pension plan. And also, the great thing about having an asset like property is that you always have the physical asset. I've spoken about this before, but if you look at things like Bitcoin, great investment, I'm sure. And certainly my son would say that because he's involved in the industry with institutional Bitcoin. But the point I'm making is that physically, if it's gone, it's gone. This is something real, it's something tangible. Property in the UK is on land. And there's an old adage, buy land, they're not making any more. And it's never truer than here in London. Yes, central London may have fallen out of popularity because of the pandemic. That's true. But here in the burbs, here in the suburbs, people are still buying, they're still renting, they're still selling, there's still good demand across the board. And I suspect that will continue. And if we just make it more affordable for first-time buyers, we'll see those flats bounce back very strongly. And the last thing I would recommend for buyers of buy-to-let property is when you're looking at the yield, bear in mind the service charges. So small conversion flats tend to have quite low outgoings, so there's not much in the way of costs. And this is really important. If you get into some of the purpose-built flats, these costs can build substantially and eat into your profit. And you can never rely on what they're going to be or what repairs might be needed. So consequently, it brings me on to my next point, which is that with some small houses locally, which cost about the same as a conversion flat, they represent a really good buy-to-let investment because you get the income, but actually there are no service charges, no lease issues, no lift repairs that might come up or fire safety issues that might come up because they're just a house. And of course, still having the garden as well. So for me, if you can afford it, across the board in my area, I would advise good, strong investment, 2-bedroom conversion with a share of the freehold or 2-bedroom house. The conversion flat preferably with a garden, and the house will have a garden anyway locally. We've got lots of small ex-local authority houses in Norbury, which are not on council estates, which represent very good value for money. And, people buy them all the time, rent them out, get a good yield, minimum hassle, and a good, strong ability to resell as and when the time is right. So I hope that's helpful to everybody. And thanks everybody for your comments, especially from Kazakhstan. Gosh, Gosh, I'm glad you enjoyed it. And yeah, I hope you stay safe and well. Obviously, we're back tomorrow for another edition of Ken at 10. We're always here at 10 o'clock in the morning. So if you are, join us. The weather here in southwest London is overcast, a little bit chilly, but not too bad. We're still number one for sales in the local area, as you'll see from a post that we published yesterday, right across the board on Rightmove. Very proud of that and proud of my team here. We're still here physically in the office working. We do have the door locked for obvious reasons. But if you've got a property query, quite often we get calls from all over the country now. And I love it. I'm really, becoming maybe a little property doctor in that way. And always happy to help if I can, So if you've got a query, you need some help, you just want 5 minutes just to, explain your situation and get some advice. We're good at that. We sell, we let, been doing it for many years. We have experience across the board. So if we can help you, then give us a shout. Of course, if you're selling, letting, or thinking of buying, you need some buy-to-let advice, we're here for that too. That's what we do. So stay safe, have a great day, look after yourselves and your family. I'll be back same time tomorrow. Ciao.